The church in our day has become so much like the world that you can't tell the difference, really. There's not very much difference. They do about everything everybody else does. This sounds like a shocking thing, but it's true. Are you sure that you want to be led and controlled by a spirit who will stand in sharp opposition to the world's easy ways? Are you sure that you can't get along all right the way you are? And you'll make it all right, that you don't want to be too religious. You'll make it all right. As long as you feel that way about it, you'll make it all right. But it'll be a mediocre, half-dead Christianity. Jesus wants to be Lord of your life, so that you no longer are in command of the little vessel in which you sail. You want to be filled with the Spirit bad enough that you can stand against the easy ways of the world and live the life of a Christian, the hard life of a Christian. The Lord's people want Jesus to do all the dying. They don't want to know what the cross means. Now, my friends, I'm through. Now, what are we going to do about it?
Hey, what's happening, students? So good to be with you. So thankful that you're here. And I love the rebel idea, as all my life I've sort of felt just a little bit rebellious. Subtle ways, like not protester rebellious, not like fights in the street rebellious, not streaking through football games rebellious, but I've just felt a little bit rebellious, and most of that stems from this problem I have where I just don't want to do what somebody else wants me to do. Am I alone in that, though? Am I the only one that's like that, that struggles a little bit when it comes to someone else telling you what to do? Well, truth be told, that for me has not served me very well throughout my life. I'll give you one story. Years ago, we were shooting a video that we were going to use in student ministry, and we needed to capture some footage from like police officers and a police station and police cars. And so someone had the idea, like, hey, why don't we go to a police station and get that footage? I said, brilliant, let's go do that. But then someone else raised their hand and like, shouldn't we get permission first? Get out of here. You don't need permission to go to a police station and just get footage. It's for a church video. So the next day, we get in my truck and we start driving around this police department, and video guys in the passenger seat sitting inconspicuously, like holding camera out, looking at all the police cars as they're coming out of the parking lot. And we go back and forth like 20 times to get all the footage that we needed. And I don't know exactly how this happened, but we found ourselves like inside the parking lot where all of the cop cars are. And we're just driving up and down the lanes, getting all the footage we need of the police officers that are walking by and the police cars. And I to this day, I don't remember if there was some type of like security measure, if there was like a guard or a gate that we passed by, but either way, we just like were there and evaded that. Well, then we drive away from the police station and like look in the rear view real quick, like coast is clear, like no problem. Like, why were you guys so worried about asking permission with something that's just so simple? Well, the next day, I get a call on my phone from a number that I don't recognize. So I pick up the phone, and it's a police detective that wants to know what I was doing yesterday. Well, what do you mean? Like, well, I got a couple questions for you. Were you taking footage of a police department and police cars yesterday in your truck, your white Chevy Silverado? It's like, yeah. Okay. Well, did you happen to get permission to take footage of police officers on duty in a police department before you went and did that and drove on our parking lot? No? Okay. Well, just so you know, it's illegal to do that. You can't do that. It's like, sorry? So we hang up. He's like, all right, cool. No big deal. Well, then the next day or the day after that, I can't remember, I get another call from a guy that works for that same police department. This is the coolest thing I've ever heard. He said that he happened to be in his captain's office, and he looks on top of his captain's desk, and he sees this sheet of paper that says, it's like a weekly update. It says, like, possible terrorist threats. I'm on that list. I made it. I made the list. There's a picture of me in my truck. There's my name. So he just called, like, as a courtesy, just so you know, you're like a terrorist threat in Arizona. Nevertheless, for me, just those moments of rebellion have rarely worked out in my life. But ever since I was a Christian, since the early years of high school when I came to faith, there's something about Jesus' rebel spirit I've so been drawn to. I don't know if you've been drawn to Jesus' rebel spirit. I think if you listen to the way that people describe Jesus today, it's not often that you hear him described as that. It's almost as though, like, if you see pictures, imagery, people talk about Jesus, that he's like floating, he's just floating around Israel, nice fighting with all the people, passing out free hugs and miracles. Like, Jesus is just so sweet and kind everywhere. And hey, we know Jesus was super kind and super loving. But at the same time, don't be mistaken. Jesus was a full-out cultural, countercultural rebel. Give you a couple examples. Jesus' rebellion, he was one that saw what everybody else saw in society. Everyone else knew that it wasn't supposed to be that way, just like he did, but he said something about it. That's what stood out for Jesus, is that everybody else saw those same things, and it wasn't okay, and he did something about it. Jesus saw the way that the world treated children. Everybody else saw the way that the world treated children in this day, and Jesus wasn't okay with that. Jesus saw the way that the world treated women. At the time, women had no voice, no power, no authority, and Jesus just wasn't okay with it. Jesus saw the way that the world treated those that were diseased and those that were kind of disenfranchised, and he wasn't okay with that. The way the world saw those people, Jesus wasn't okay with that. Jesus saw the way that the world treated sinners. Like, when the Bible describes sinners, it's kind of ironic because it's often the people that needed God. They kind of pushed those people outside of the church and outside of the places where they could actually hear about God. And Jesus just wasn't okay with it. Jesus was a full-out rebel. But tonight, I want to talk with you about one of the ways that Jesus' rebellion, and all of Jesus' rebellion, ended up starting a revolution. And you'll see this over the course of the next couple of weeks. But Jesus' rebellion and what he had a hard time with still kind of lives in our world today. Perhaps it still, at times, lives with us today. And I wanted to describe a little bit of this to you. So this is Jesus in Jerusalem. He is surrounded by all of the super hyper religious elite. He's actually in the temple. And around him are the people that know and understand Judaism better than anybody else. These are the teachers and the experts in that religion. And Jesus looks around and he sees what they've been a part of. He's actually been observing them for years, watching the way that they teach and watching the way that they live their lives and seeing that maybe there's a little bit of a gap. And then he just starts to unleash on these guys. I don't know if you've been around someone that just gets chewed out before. I don't know if you've been like chewed out before. Football guys, you know what I'm talking about, like when your coach is just letting you have it. Ladies, you've been around anybody that's just like chewing you out and you just kind of cringe a little bit. And I don't know Jesus' body posture at the time. I don't know his tone, but I can tell you there's some aggressive with this. There's some assertiveness with Jesus, he's not happy with who he's speaking to. He's got a problem with them. These are the religious dudes that are here. And I'll just give you a couple sound bites of things that Jesus said. This is Matthew chapter 23. It's getting towards the end when Jesus is about to finish his ministry. He's about to die on the cross, and so he's kind of bringing things to completion right now. Here's some sound bites. He says, "But do not do what they do," speaking to the religious people, "for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. Everything they do is done for people to see." Everything that they do, hands up in worship, loud prayers in the synagogue, are done for other people to see. He says, "You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those who are trying to enter." And then one more, he says this, "On the outside, you appear to people as righteous. You appear to people as spiritual, but on the inside, you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." You know, that word is interesting. If someone called you a hypocrite, you probably would be offended, unless you are. You know, like most of us would be offended if someone called us a hypocrite. But if you were in Jesus' day and you were a Jew and someone called you a hypocrite, it'd be next level disrespect. Why that would be the case is because they did not have a word that the Jews, the Hebrew language, recognized as hypocrite. That was a Greek word. You've probably heard that before, that the Greek word for hypocrite is associated with the theater. It's a person that was acting, wearing a mask. So when Jesus says the word hypocrite to them, this is fighting words, okay? This is a big deal for them. And when he says this, in Matthew chapter 23, verse 25, you can read along with me on the screens. He says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they're full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside also will be clean." What is Jesus saying to these people? He's basically calling them actors. He's saying that they're wearing this mask and they're pretending to be spiritual, pretending to be religious. And why that was a problem was because all of the other people were watching who were supposed to be God's representatives, who were supposed to be living out this rich, real faith, and they weren't living that. They were wearing a mask. They were wearing a mask, and what that mask would look like is they would hold people to standards, and they didn't keep those standards. They would hide or they would reveal their religious activities publicly, but behind the scenes, those things wouldn't match their lifestyle. They were cruel and mean to people, but they're supposed to be representing God. And this mask they were wearing was actually keeping people from the very God that put them on this earth. Jesus was not okay with this. He was not okay with the mask. But perhaps that mask still exists a little bit today. I was having iced tea with a friend of mine, and we were talking about faith and Jesus. And just so you know, like every time I sit down, all of my conversations are not about Jesus. I'm going to always talk about faith and, belief. Sometimes it's just about sports and movies and we're hanging. So don't kind of get sideways with that. Sometimes we're just hanging out. This one happened to be a conversation about Jesus. And he has a hang up with Christianity. Really, he has a hang up with Christians. He says, one of my problems with being a Christian, if I were to be that, is that it just seems like there's so many people that are hypocritical. They live one way in the church and a different way outside the church. And I was listening to him. As I'm sitting there listening to him, it sort of dawned on me. I'm not sure if I've ever had this thought before. It dawned on me as I was thinking, you know what he's describing of a person that doesn't seem to always match their actions with their words. What he's describing is me. Like, Maybe not to the degree that he's painting a picture of this hypocrite, but I was listening to him and trying to track with him. I said, hey, I need you to stop it for a minute, man. I think your notion that the church is filled with hypocrites is true. We are. I am. Like, do I walk off stages sometimes where I've been preaching about Jesus and, like, in my thoughts, bask hatred or anger? Yeah, I do. Do I live in such a way that always reflects this, like, Jesus character? No, I don't. Sometimes I'm selfish. Sometimes I'm rude. Sometimes I'm prideful. And quite frankly, I'm pretty messed up at times. So just wanted to let you know that, hey, I am that at times. I am a broken dude. And the difference is this: I'm just a person that needs Jesus. And I started to describe that for him. I kind of see his face changing a little bit to, I don't know if it was a matter of relief, if it was a matter of him saying, like, I kind of get it. I get that in the church. And then I said, I think maybe what the problem is that all too often, those of us that consider ourselves Christian, if you don't consider yourself a Christian, this will probably be obvious to you. But for those of us who consider ourselves Christians, the problem is that we know that we're not flawless or that we're perfect, right? We know that we're not. We know that we have all kinds of errors in our way. But the issue is that those that don't believe think that we don't know, because oftentimes we just don't say anything. We don't reveal that we are wearing masks. We wear masks all the time. Do we always say and do the same things? Nope. Do we always obey God? Nope. Are we inconsistent sometimes from people group to people group? And when we're out in the field and our language in certain places, yeah, we're inconsistent. Maybe what the world needs to know from us, those in the room that consider yourselves Jesus followers, is that, hey, we've got a mask. We've got a mask, and what we need to do is rebel against it. We've got a mask, and sometimes we fake it. Sometimes we pretend. But how would we do that? How would we rebel against this mask that we oftentimes wear? Let me offer some suggestions. Maybe what we need to do is stop posting judgmental accusations and trying to change people through social media. And maybe what we need to do is we need to stop ignoring, or we need to start ignoring everybody else's problems and maybe just really focus in on the things that we need to get right in our own hearts. Maybe what we need to do is admit that we've got faults, and we need to admit that to the people that are around us to let them know. In case they don't, which they probably do know, they just don't know that you know that you're not perfect, right? Maybe we need to just strive to be the same person no matter where we're at. Working to be the same type of person that you are in this room right now as you are tomorrow at school and the next day after that. That we just start to be that same person over and over again. I guess what I'm asking is that we just start to rebel against the masks that all of us wear. We rebel against that mask of perfectionism that we often embody. And I started writing these, and I was actually writing these masks because I think I have them. And I think I have ways of getting around that, but I think I wear them. I have this mask of perfectionism that I'm this way and that everybody else is not. This mask of judgmentalism that I've been put on this earth to make sure that everybody knows how to live their lives, that everybody knows the mistakes they're making. That's not my job. My job is to live out Jesus' words, to love other people. It's your job too. And then I can wear this mask that gives off the impression that people aren't accepted around me. Maybe you can relate to one of those masks. I don't know the mask that you wear, but I know that they exist for us. There's a student named Daniel. It's from the Scottsdale campus. He's a junior in high school, and he was describing this past couple of years in high school. He said that for years, he's really just kind of masked himself with drugs and partying and alcohol. And it was really just to cover up some of the pain that he experienced in his life, which is the case for most of us who kind of medicate. And he said that for years, he just surrounded himself with people that made him feel better, but in the end of it all, those people just led him to live the way that he knows he didn't want to live, if you can relate. So it's a couple of days before camp. He just met a friend. I don't know how long they've known each other, but he'd met this friend sometime in high school, and this friend was like such an honest person. She was just real. She let him know that her faith is a big part of who she is, that she's not perfect. But she would also call him out on the things that he was doing that he knows he shouldn't be doing. But he did that in a way it was with love, and it was with respect, and with this understanding that she's not without fault. And so he respected her. And so he said, hey, I want to go to camp. How do I get to camp? 5 days before we're getting ready to go to camp, and registration's closed. We have no spots, like many other times where we have no spots. God kind of makes a way. So he sends this email to our Scottsdale campus student pastor. His name's Johnny. I'll read for you this email. They like Johnny. He says, hey, Johnny, my name's Daniel. I know registration for camp is closed, but I'm really in need of change in my life. I don't know much about Jesus, but I was recommended to come by my friend Addison. I've been through a lot, and I question if I'm worth Jesus' love. I'd love to come to camp if it's still possible. I love his authenticity in that email. I'm not even sure if I'm worth Jesus' love. I don't even know if he'd accept me. And those of us that know Jesus know, well, that's why he came. It's because he loves and accepts you. There's no one that's like outside of Jesus' reach, but Daniel doesn't know that. He just has kind of believed that, and he's put his view of Jesus and his view of Christians as this place where maybe he's just not accepted there. Maybe there's people that are going to reject him when he gets there. But that wasn't the case. He came to camp, and his group surrounded him and loved him like so many of our groups do on our campuses. He saw that they're real people. He saw that everyone was willing to take the mask off and see that I'm real. It's who I am. I'm authentic. Over the course of those days, he started contemplating, like, maybe I'm ready for Jesus. And he described his life as like a fight. He said for years, it's just been a fight. He'd get in a fight with his mom, and she'd kick him out. He'd have to go find money and food and a way to live, and so he'd go to like an MMA gym, and he'd fight, and he'd make some money that way. And it was always a struggle for him. And finally, he was at camp, and he realized, I don't have to fight anymore. He came, and he took a knee, and he surrendered his life to Jesus and gave his life to Jesus there on that platform. And then 2 weeks later, on the 14th, he also got baptized, like so many other students that have done the same thing. What I love about this story, and this is a picture of Daniel getting baptized on our Scottsdale campus. Very cool. I like the one dude that's like modeling right there too. He's like, what's up? What I love about that image and that picture is like you see that everyone's surrounding him, everyone loving him, everyone who just knows like, Daniel's broken. Daniel's got faults. So do we. What is so cool is one of his friends said, hey, do you have a ride to get to church? He's like, I don't. Daniel lives 30 minutes away from this campus, from the Scottsdale campus. He lives 30 minutes away, and this friend said, I'll come pick you up. So every Sunday, that friend drives 30 minutes to go pick him up, 30 minutes to drop him off. He sacrifices an hour of his time just because he has a friend that needs to be in this place. You know, I just imagine, you can clap for that, that's cool. I just imagine that there's like a city outside of our church campuses that need to see like the real us. They need to hear from us in this way that is authentic and it's real and it's not about perfection. It's not about this mask that we're wearing. But could you imagine what it would look like if we just started to act that way, that we revealed to them that, hey, we need Jesus too. Not only have you given your life to Jesus, but you continue to need Jesus because there's so many things that you haven't figured out and I haven't figured out, and I'm just trying to work through the same problems that so many people are. But could you imagine what it would look like if we would let our guards down? We'd no longer pretend and no longer act, but we just love people at our school. That's the kind of rebel I want to be. That's the kind of rebel I hope our student ministry continues to be, is the rebel against the mask. Let me pray for you. Father, thank you so much for your love. Thank you for allowing us to be who we really are, that we don't have to pretend and we can rest easy, that even though we are very short of what you want us to be, you love us nonetheless. You're calling us to be greater, and you're giving us ways to know you better. You're giving us ways to change our schools and our cities, and we're grateful for you. We love you. Thank you for your rebel spirit. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.